But isn't this one of these stories like this? I mean, for example, if 8,000 years from now you find a copy of Star Wars in a DVD player, you
All right, all right. You can go ahead, like, go in the laugh if you want to.
But I mean, you say, isn't that the Sumerians we're talking about that made everything up?
Did they make it up?
Well, that's what we said in the beginning, was we don't believe a word they say.
Oh, modern scholars don't believe a word they say. Okay, modern scholarship doesn't believe it. That's the point I'm trying to make. I hopefully am not saying that I discount it all as myth. I don't, but modern scholarship does. Now, I had one student several years back make fun and left the class and never came back. I want to tell you though, I mean, I listened to another professor here give a lecture on ancient history. The one thing you must understand, their mind was different from ours in almost every respect. Much more spiritually, perhaps, I don't know if spiritual is the right word to use, but they were much more in tune with the spirit world and with seeming with nature than we are. Hey, the first lesson I had at UT, I took ancient history at UT. First lesson, Dr. Bain was a teacher. September 1971, opening lecture was about someone who was sticking swords in a statue. The purpose was to hurt the person whom he made the statue of. What we today would call voodoo or sympathetic magic. And the professor said they believed this stuff strongly. And they believed that if they wanted to destroy a king, they'd build a statue of him and stuck that statue with pins, or cut that statue's head off. And they could thereby set up a situation that would lead to the destruction of the person they were. Now, they believed it. I'm not saying this we should practice this today. Again, the Sumerians are extinct. The only Sumerians who are alive today are the ones who are descended from Abraham, who himself was a Sumerian. All other Sumerians you know of are dead, gone, forgotten about. The Sumerians were forgotten about, folk. They disappeared from history about the year zero, about the time of Christ. And nobody even remembered them until the 1850s when they were suddenly dug up. They became extinct. And yet they were the inventors of language, the inventors of, well, as far as we know, and they discovered farming, civilization. I must elaborate. I'm running out of time. I must elaborate on that word civilization. Civilization has to do with being civil, of course. It means, all right, when I was a kid and they asked me to write about what is civilization, I said, oh, it must be the ability to write. It's too simplistic. It involves a situation where you have a class of people who do not have to gather food or farm. Governments, a government class, a priestly class, or a class of educators. And they are fed by the farmers, the other people, and basically have an organized society. It involves kings, governments, armies, schools, and of course writing, generally religion. This is civilization. The Sumerians, as far as we know, claimed they were the inventors of civilization, where you have a society organized where this person gets up and he works on shoes. Over here is that person, he works on as a hog raiser. And over there's someone who works as a tanner, leather builder. He sells his products to the shoemaker, of course. That's civilization. You cannot have an advanced society without it. I mean, even something as simple as this watch, there's no one place in the world that has all the parts you need to make it. You have to buy it. You make your automobiles by the factories procuring this part from this part of the continent, that part from another continent, that part. I mean, hey, I've put together many a radio project, electronic project, and parts procurement becomes a big, big issue because 80 or 90% of the parts, the electronic parts that once were made, are no longer made. And just in the last month, I had to put a radio on a shelf that I put together 38 years ago, and now can't fix it. The company that made it is no longer in existence. The parts that I think are bad can probably not be found. I put it on a shelf. Maybe I'll get back to it. Bought me a new one. Hard to part with it, but you know, sometimes you have to. Anyway, parts procurement, trade. It involves trade. You get some of what you need from other places far away because they have more. They make more of what they make than they need, and you make more of some things than you need. So you trade what you have for what they have. Big part of civilization involves trade. Big part of. All right. Who was the first character? Now, at one time we said Hammurabi was the first character believed. We now have gone farther back. The first character we recognize is Sargon. Sargon of Agad. Now, he's remembered among other things being a conqueror. He started out small, and like Moses, he was drawn up from the water. So was Cyrus. Cyrus, Moses, did all this in common. They were thrown into a basket and left to float and die, and someone drew them out of the water. Sargon built an empire, and he did it by conquering other city-states. And folks, it's only been 110 years ago that conquest was looked on as being evil, imperialist. At one time, conquest was looked on as being a virtue. As recent as 1990, Saddam Hussein tried to conquer Kuwait and brought the whole world down on him, and President Bush said there's a new world order. We don't conquer our neighbors anymore. But in those days they did, and they looked at it as a virtue because they looked on as our civilization is better than yours, therefore we have a duty and an obligation to civilize you, to make you into better persons, and also if you didn't conquer them, guess what? They would conquer you, or they would come in to your village, steal away your wives and children, and carry them off, and make slaves of them. If you conquered them, all you had to do was tell your local magistrate, and he could go get them for you. If the people, and this is why the Chinese built a great wall. This business of uncivilized people coming in and taking away the families of the civilized was a problem that humankind had down through the ages. The solution was go take these primitive people, conquer them, and make civilized people out of them. Again, it was looked on as being a virtue. Today it's looked on as being a vice, but Sargon was an empire builder, as was Hammurabi, that we'll talk about next time. These people were looked on as being great because they conquered. They built up an empire. Hammurabi started off by conquering one city-state, picked on a weaker city-state. Then he got them on his side, and with combined armies, they conquered another semi-weak city-state. After 30 years, he had all of Babylon. Sargon, his capital was at Agad. We don't know where that is, but some people think it's close to Babylon. Hammurabi, his capital is Babylon, the chief city of them all. All right, now, before we leave, there's something I want to say about dropping the class if you want to do that. If you decide not to come back, do me a favor, number one, and do your, notice, there are people on the waiting list who want to get into this class. If you drop, there'll be room for you. Number two, if you don't drop, but just simply quit coming to class, the only thing I can do about it is at the end of the semester, come December, give you a test. And every semester, we all talk about it. We have students, some of them who are on their way to an A+, who just all of a sudden quit coming to class, don't give a reason, and we can't contact them. Now, maybe they had a sickness, maybe they had a job change or something else, but do us a favor, make it easier on us and you, and drop the course. All right, anybody have any comments, questions? When I was in school, they told us the job of a college teacher is to shock young students into thinking. Hopefully I'll give you a jump start into doing some deep thinking. If you think this lesson is shocking, come back on Wednesday for a few more. All right, class dismissed.